It probably won't come as a surprise to you that Donald had some issues with his mother. Um, but apparently, that's extrapolating to all mothers just in time for Mother's Day. If you were planning to buy your mother flowers for the holiday, which, by the way, is something that almost everybody does, you should brace yourself because you're probably going to be spending a lot more than you usually would now that it's Donald's economy. Here's WPLG, local 10, with the update.
Mother's Day could be a little pricier. That's because the majority of flowers sold in the U.S. are imported from countries with climates friendly for growing, and those imports are facing tariffs. So there's a lot that you should know before you go out there and order a bouquet for your mommy. 80% of flowers mostly come from Colombia and Ecuador. And because of President Trump's 10% baseline tariff, the extra cost will likely head to the florist, and that will in turn be passed on to you, the consumer. Floral spending has reached new heights over the years, with 74% of consumers saying they do plan to buy them for their mom on Mother's Day.
Okay, tariffs 101. They don't just impact the country upon whom they're imposed, they impact the consumer in the country who buys those products. So if a country is charged 10% more to export its goods, then that cost is passed on to the company or florist, in this case, buying said products. And guess what? You think the florist is going to eat that 10%? No, they're going to pass it on to you. But of course, it isn't just flowers, though. Donald's tariffs are making all mothers' lives more difficult. The Trump regime talks all the time, and I mean, we don't have to limit it to the Trump regime. We could talk about the entire Republican Party and how for decades now they've tried to pretend to the American people that they're so pro-family. But it's pretty obvious, or it should be, that most of their policies seek to undermine the strength of the American family and make life harder for anybody who has the audacity to want to have a family. Just look at this CNBC clip.
Car seats, high chairs, and strollers. New parents can expect to pay about $20,000, according to Babysitter Center, in the first year of their kid's life, and that's about to go up.
It sure is, Kelly. So some 97% of the nearly $400 million worth of baby strollers that the U.S. imported last year came from China. For car seats, that number was 87%, according to Import Genius. So that means there are very few places to turn as tariffs climb, and that forces both retailers and consumers to start paying a higher price. So starting today, customers will see higher prices on some of the biggest brands in baby gear, from Nuna to UPPAbaby at Three Littles, a kid shop in Washington. And its owner tells us that brands are raising prices anywhere from $20 to as high as $300 for big ticket items, all because of the tariffs.
Yeah, this is a brilliant economic policy. Let's be clear. This is all because of Donald's tariffs. The tariffs he imposed unilaterally and unprovoked because he doesn't understand anything about the economy. I mean, he certainly understands nothing about how tariffs work. A lot of other U.S. imports have been moved to places like Vietnam and Thailand over the past few years, but the production of virtually every important baby product has stayed in China because we have built long-standing relationships in factories, or I should say our companies and corporations have built long-standing relationships with factories who meet the United States' strict baby safety requirements. With Donald tariffs in place, American retailers are largely halting shipments from China because prices are more than doubling. Remember that 149% tariff Donald put on every single product coming out of China? Well, it's very likely that all of this is also going to apply to baby gear. Because of this, parents are going to pay much more and may also face shortages on those items. Because let's be honest, like, why would companies import massive amount of products that have become almost unaffordable to most of their consumers? If you're a parent who wants to keep your children safe, Donald's making that harder too. He recently shot down the idea of making a tariff exemption to a reporter. So watch this.
Treasury Secretary just told lawmakers that a tariff exemption for certain baby items like car seats is under consideration. Will you exempt some products that families?
I don't know. I'll think about it. I don't know. I really don't. I want to make it nice and simple. I'm not looking to have so many exemptions that nobody knows what it's doing. We have to make it very simple, but I'll take a look at it.
I want to make it nice and simple, even if making it a little more complicated helps keep babies safe. Yeah, because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about your children. This is the same regime that ended a program designed to keep children from dying from sudden infant death syndrome. What could you possibly expect from these monsters? Donald is making parenting more expensive and more difficult, all, and here's the kicker, while trying to force people to have more babies. Before we go on, though, please remember we are not corporate media. We are independent media. We do not bend the knee, and we are not for sale, nor will we ever be. We expose the lies the Trump regime tells every day and wants to keep buried. Independent media survives because of you. So please like and share our videos and subscribe to our channel. Donald is actually proposing cash incentives for women to have more babies. If that sounds creepy, that's because it is creepy. He proposed a so-called baby bonus of $5,000 to American mothers after they give birth. I would get that in writing, guys. Actually, I don't even think that would guarantee it to you. So you might want to get all that money up front. He says without any evidence whatsoever that this will increase the United States' declining birth rate. Well, it turns out, I know this will shock you, that's wrong. He also wants to give a mom's medal to women with 6 or more children. That sounds like fascism to me, as well as also being deeply creepy. We live in a country in which one party, one of our two major parties, the fascist Republican Party, pretends to care, I should say, about embryos. They refer to these as the unborn, unborn children, but these are really clumps of cells that are impossible to see without a microscope, or they're blastocysts, or maybe they're fetuses very early in the pregnancy. That is the only form of life the fascist Republicans claim to care about. Once that child is born, however, let me back up actually. As soon as a woman knows that she is pregnant with that clump of cells, that's when the Republican Party ceases to give a shit about the mother. After the embryo becomes a fetus and the fetus becomes an actual child in the world, that's when the fascist Republicans cease to care about the child. So, first of all, as I said, be very skeptical that you're going to get that money from the federal government. Secondly, Donald's tariffs are making things so incredibly unaffordable that $5,000 isn't really going to get you very far. And third, do you know how impossible it is, or nearly impossible, because I know some people do this, nearly impossible it is to raise 6 or more children? I'm sure the medal will help tremendously. Anyway, this is all a scam. It's just another way to keep women tied down, bound to the Republicans' terrifying vision of what it is to be a woman in America. So please don't fall for it. And let's hope that these policies are never, ever put into place. Now, critics question Donald's baby bonus proposal, one telling NBC News it was, quote, just completely bananas, unquote. Stephanie Schmidt, the director of childcare and early education at the Center for Law and Social Policy, told The Guardian that the average cost of infant care in the U.S. is $14,000 to $25,000 a year. Quote, $5,000 gets you almost nowhere when you're thinking about utilizing it to pay for the expenses of having a young child, unquote. Now, Donald clearly didn't do his homework because my Aunt Marianne is no longer alive to do it for him. And he pointed out that other countries that have tried similar cash incentives haven't seen real improvement in the birth rate. Michigan's Senate candidate Mallory McMorrow rattled off some actually good incentives to a person about, who actually cares about working families and who would implement such policies.
Here are 10 things we could do that would be a hell of a lot better than a one-time $5,000 check. Pass paid leave, end gun violence, fully fund our public schools, offer universal pre-K, make childcare accessible and affordable, protect clean air and water, restore the child tax credit, reimagine the workday to work for working parents, offer quality maternal health care, ensure access to affordable housing, groceries, insurance, and more. None of this is rocket science. Giving people $5,000 to have a baby isn't going to solve a lot of these systemic issues. We know what works because we've seen it work. We just have to have the will to do it, and young parents in the Senate who know what it's like so that they will fight for these priorities.
Now, Mallory McMorrow alluded to this, but didn't say it explicitly. Out of all of those 10 things that would make life much easier for both parents, especially working parents and their infants, the fascist Republicans are against all of them. So, $5,000 sounds like a lot of money, especially if you are a working person in this country and Donald's tariffs are pricing things out of your reach. Housing is becoming increasingly unaffordable. Inflation is rising, et cetera, et cetera. But because of all of those things, $5,000 is going to go even less far than it already does. So that is not a reason to have a child anyway. Maybe let's start electing people who will do all of the things that will make it easier to have children, and maybe not just easier, but actually a joyful experience. Wouldn't that be nice? Part of what's going on here, of course, is that the Republican Party is also a party of the patriarchy. These are authoritarian patriarchs who believe that women are second-class citizens, and they agree with the corrupt supermajority of the Supreme Court that women do not deserve things like the same rights as men or bodily autonomy. Now, women have begun in our society to have more job opportunities, more options, and the Republicans don't like that. So one thing that's going on, and this may seem unrelated at first, but the attack on immigrants is sort of part of all of this. How exactly? Well, on top of illegally deporting hundreds of immigrants without due process, Donald is proposing cash incentives for immigrants to leave of their own volition. NBC News has that report here.
The Trump administration rolling out this new program today, cash for people who voluntarily self-deport, essentially. Walk us through what this means.
Hi there, Hallie. Well, you were talking about carrots and sticks with Christine, and this is perhaps a rare instance of the Trump administration offering a carrot to undocumented immigrants who are in this country, offering them a $1,000 stipend and travel assistance to self-deport. Now, they're hoping if they leave voluntarily that they won't be then banned from entering the country, returning to the country at some point with legal status of some sort.
We thought we'd do is a self-deport, where we're going to pay each one a certain amount of money, and we're going to get them a beautiful flight back to where they came from, and they have a period of time. And if they make it, we're going to work with them so that maybe someday, with a little work, they can come back in if they're good people, if they're the kind of people that we want in our company, industrious people that could love our country.
Well, considering you hate our country and our country is not a company, maybe you're not the person to be making those determinations. I mean, it's kind of fascinating that when it comes to eradicating people's rights, Donald is more than willing to throw our money around. So while he wants to give people cash to leave, he's proposed to start charging $3,500 to citizens sponsoring immigrant children. So I think American family members willing to take custody of children who are fleeing adversity, caring for them while they seek citizenship, are going to be fined for that act of caring. That is not pro-family, that is not pro-children, and that is not pro-basic human decency. Donald is trying to erase immigrants from our country to the same degree that he is trying to erase women's rights and people's abilities to have strong, thriving, financially stable families. Immigrants and immigration actually tend to improve birth rates, however. So, that's where the contradiction lies. Last year, Pew Research Center published a study that found that between 2000 and 2020, 14 countries and territories saw population growth that was 100% driven by immigrants, mostly in Europe. These populations would have declined without immigration. For example, the population of the United Arab Emirates grew by 6.1 million people in the same period, and it would have declined by 210,000 without new immigrants. An article on the study said that, quote, the only way a country's population can increase, aside from having more births than deaths, is through immigration, unquote. Donald doesn't want to grow our population in general. He wants the population of white people in this country to grow. So, this coming Mother's Day, which is on Sunday, let's remember that Donald Trump, the Trump regime, and the fascist Republican Party do not care about mothers, motherhood, or children. It is all empty rhetoric, completely undermined by their very real anti-women, anti-children policies that, as time goes on, are becoming more and more dangerous and widespread. Do not fall for their bullshit. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.